Today, on this episode of Between the Lines, we'll look at religion outside of the box with Rabbi Brian Zachary Mayer. I'm Barry Kibrick. I discovered Rabbi Brian when I was invited to one of his services and began to find out more about his thinking through his website, Religion-Outside-The-Box. Brian's struggle with religion and his quest for answers led him to rabbinical school. But that was only the beginning, for he still struggles and he still questions.
I'm a writer today because I was a reader when I was 11 years old, and it was...
You do not need to prove your state of happiness to anybody.
Most of these speeches were as much as a month in preparation.
Characters, the heroes in this book, are seekers of truth in a story that involves a lot of corruption.
You don't get a chance to really talk about what's real, and it's the first.
Rabbi, welcome to the show. This is a sort of a first, because normally there'd be a book here that we would be discussing, or a film, but this time it's a little different. I was able to attend one of your services by a friend who invited me, and this is a show that was about a website. Yeah. And it's about the writings on that website, and whether it becomes a book later on or something, it might, but that's what we're going to discuss, a website. And I'll give the website out, I'll mention it. It's Religion Outside the Box, but we'll put it up officially on the screen later as well. And the first thing I wanted to talk about is these words. True religion is living life as fully as possible, as long as possible, while knowing that death is an uncompromising reality. You use that at the very beginning of your website. Why those words? What does that in particular mean to you and religion?
A lot of people wait. Like, I'll get my life in order and I'll get it all together when I'm older. We don't know how much time any of us have. We need to really start figuring out our life, what we're doing, our spiritual life, coming to a sense of peace now. There's no choice. I mean, what are you going to do this next month? I mean, maybe, but there's no time like the present.
You tell another story about your brother-in-law, Bob, and he's the friend, in fact, that I knew. And you were talking about your mom. And in it, you were saying how your mom, I don't remember exactly what, but she had cancer, and there was a serious situation. And Bob all of a sudden begins to laugh. Yeah. And almost has a sense of joy because he feels he'd like to know.
Well, what
that's an interesting concept.
Yeah. Bob said, he was, I need to say, first of all, my mother is fine, thank God. Second, Bob was absolutely appropriate and, met me emotionally where I was. And then he just started musing and he said, I don't know, maybe if I got a phone call from a doctor saying, you know what, Bob, you only have a month to live. He said, well, then I could finally live. I could relax a little bit. I wouldn't have to be as neurotic as I am. I think that's the same, that's a great way of talking about our lives, our religious life, that we need to take a breath of air. We're all so harried, so frenetic. But to just think, boiling it down to goofy aphorisms, how important is it?
Well, my friend John has a very similar philosophy, and he always said, if I only knew that it would all turn out all right, I wouldn't be so anxious. But we as humans, we don't. And this is the interesting thing that you want to bring in, and that is faith. And your goal is to bring a sort of faith and religion to people who may not have any of it, and in fact may be just the opposite. Whether they're atheistic, you don't care. You don't care what their religion is. You want them, though, to, as you just intimated, get this sense of spirituality about themselves and come to terms with that for themselves.
So I would use the word surrender. Almost like I could right now get up and rearrange every book on the bookshelves. There's so many things that's a metaphor. I'm not going to do it, but there's so many things we can do. And so many things we feel we ought to do, but a sense of surrender, that there's only so much that I can do. There's a great quote that's in the Talmud that says, you're not obligated to complete the work, neither are you free to desist from it. Isn't that great?
Oh man! But again, a quandary though.
Yeah.
Now, surrender is. I've had recently on Christopher Kennedy Lawford of the Kennedy clan and the Lawford clan, and he mentioned surrender as well as how it was able to help him with his addictions that he had. And we joked because as his grandpa Joseph Kennedy and his father, Uncle John Kennedy, surrender would not be a word that would ever be uttered. Explain that again, because we don't want people to ever give up to a certain extent in pursuing desires and dreams and things that would give them satisfaction. So when you say surrender, what is that? And explain it in the way you do in Religion Outside the Box.
It's just taking some time off to breathe. Right before eating or drinking, just to take a moment, just taking a moment to realize how blessed we are, how crazy life is, to just take a moment, a little bit of perspective. Otherwise, it's that rat race. I'd say also with Religion Outside the Box, I don't care if you take your day off Friday night to Saturday night, if you do it Sunday morning. I myself, ritually, every Tuesday, take time off to do artwork. I figure it's more important to God than that I'm saying rote Hebrew prayers, that I'm taking some time off being creative, making something. Creativity, I think, is so close to godliness. Art is so close to godliness. And religion, when it's done right, I think it's all pointing to that same undefinable, unencapsulable. That's why it's religion outside the box.
And you say, in fact, that you're an artist and religion is your medium.
Yeah. I think I might be one of the world's greatest religious artists.
Without a
not a lot of people who are claiming to be religious artists. So.
Now, let's go with this line, because you do a whole thing about Santa Claus that I think is very interesting, and I'll let you play with it. But at the end, and one of the things you bring about is that real religion is for adults.
Yeah.
It is not necessarily for children.
Yeah.
Explain why you've come to that situation, and then a little bit about your Santa Claus story.
I'll start with the real children don't need religion. Religion's about freeing ourselves from ourselves. Little kids don't have enough of a sense of self, right? They're free already. You and I get confused. We need religion. Little kids don't need to be freed from the suffering of life. They're fine. Thank God most children don't have the problems, the surs, the baggage that we do. As adults, we need religion to help free us. That's what religion's really about, freeing us.
Now, isn't that funny? Because many people, especially as they went through religious school and things like that, feel just the opposite. They feel that religion is a way of tethering them, of binding them, literally. That's of binding them.
Religion means, the word religion has its root in the word to bind, unfortunately.
So where did you come up with the sense of this freedom from it? How do you make that transition?
I think it's about freeing us, maybe binding us to our concept of God, God as we understand God. It's not about, look, there's organized religion and there's religion. I have nothing wrong with organized religion. It works wonderfully for a lot of people. But there's also just what religion is, figuring it out for yourself. Let me say it this way. Religion's about getting us, it's a path to a goal. Religion's a path towards godliness. If you can find a path through playing the guitar or painting or hiking, go take a hike, or go paint. Do what works for you. Let me talk on that Santa Claus thing, because it's one of my favorite. It's basically a matrix, and I'm always hesitant to do this because it looks like I'm making the sign of a cross, which as a rabbi I feel verboten to do. But there's 4 different boxes here. Either there is a Santa Claus or not. Either there is a Santa Claus or there isn't. And either you believe in Santa Claus or you don't. Now, I'm very careful to talk about Santa Claus as opposed to God because I find it's easier for me to tell people about Santa Claus. They have much less baggage. If you hear a rabbi talking about why it behooves you to believe in God, you'd be like, yeah, we heard that before. But Santa Claus, it's kind of our American society's nice way of talking about God. So either there is a Santa Claus or there isn't. Either you believe or you don't. And Blaise Pascal, the French mathematician, proved that it behooves you to believe in God. I'll use the same proof to show you should believe in Santa Claus. You have no control whether there is a Santa Claus or not, but you do have control whether you believe. You can choose what you believe. You can choose. We have freedom of will. This one, there is a Santa Claus and you believe. Congratulations, you get gifts. It's wonderful. There is a Santa Claus you don't believe. Well, then you get coal in your stockings. There is no Santa Claus you don't believe. Doesn't matter. There is no Santa Claus yet you believe. Well, that one's the most magical. There is no Santa Claus yet you believe in Santa Claus. You're going to think you got gifts even if there were no gifts. Isn't that a nice thing? So taking it to belief in God, it doesn't cost you anything to believe in God. Now, I'm not saying you should believe in an overarching external deity who's moving your life. Some people find that abhorrent. I can understand that. When I say God, I mean nothing more or less than what you might mean when you say God, what you mean. This is such a confusing thing to talk about, so I stick with Santa Claus.
Ah, that's why.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit easier.
It's hard. There's a lot of baggage with regard to God. A lot of people had some pretty bad religious experiences and heard some pretty bad things.
Well, you say in one of your blogs that even, I'll use your words because I don't want to take a chance and say any of this. I worry about being teased for my beliefs and about having less faith tomorrow than I have today. My faith isn't always steadfast, but hey, that's the nature of faith.
Yeah. I grew up really rational. I grew up on the Upper West Side of New York City. I was president of the math club, and went to computer camp. I've got a logical, to believe in God, to have this notion that God might even be involved in my life. Well, I must be somewhat crazy to think that. You know, nobody in my family ever said religion was the opiate of the masses, but it was definitely the undertone. So I feel a little weird being here talking to you with everybody listening to hear me say, yeah, I kind of sort of believe in God. I'm afraid that they might think I'm a weird eccentric.
But yet, to struggle.
Yeah, struggle with God.
That is the nature of it. It's okay to struggle with that thought constantly.
Absolutely. That's they say that the word Israel literally means Yisrael, struggles with God, and I think that's perfect. It's not struggled with God that you've defeated God. It's not will struggle with God. It struggles with God. That's what it means to be a person of Israel, to be Arab, to be Christian, to be Jewish, is to be a child of Israel, to be a child of the struggle with God. I think we all struggle with God. I think it's part of the relationship. To have a relationship with God is to fight with God, to try to understand God, to have a real adult relationship involves sometimes a little bit of struggling and a little bit of name calling sometimes. That's all right with me.
Well, you asked this question, though, on your website, and that is, what does God expect of us?
Yeah.
Now, it's one thing for us to struggle. It's one thing for us to not believe. It's one thing for us to believe. I won't judge on that regard. But yet you're saying, what does God expect of us? Sounds very JFK, I think of, ask not what, you can do for, what your country can do for you. What can you do for your country? This seems very similar on that plane. What is expected of you?
Rabbi Heschel wrote a book called, he was a fabulous man. If you ever see pictures of Martin Luther King walking, there was an old man with a white beard. That was Rabbi Heschel, who wrote a book called God in Search of Humanity, God in Search of Man. God's actually the one looking for us. I think that's a great question. What does God want of you? I think to myself, what does God want from me? And the easiest way for me to answer is I know what God wants because it's what I'm doing. Whatever I'm doing obviously is what God wants because I'm doing it. But that's kind of a little bit of a cop-out. But what is it that God wants from me? I think, and this is where I feel a little bit cuckoo to say, I think God wants me to be here on a television show telling people to take their religious lives into their own hands. I think I'm supposed to be doing that. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I really know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I could say, God wants that from me.
Now, one of the things you talk about is prayer. And just to flip that again, in prayer, we oftentimes are asking something of God. You say that we must get this notion of praying and asking out of our heads.
Well, those are great prayers. There are three different kinds of prayers. There's petition prayer, there's praise prayer, and there's presence prayer. Petition prayer, that's the one we all know about. God, please make sure I don't say anything stupid while I'm on this show. That's a petition prayer. There's praise prayer. God, yeah, you rock. You know, that's a praise prayer. Anytime we're thankful, that's a gratitude list is praise. And then there's presence. You know when you're on the phone and you're leaving a voicemail or a message for somebody and you just find yourself and you're still talking and you're talking and you don't really know what you're talking about anymore and you kind of come to and you're still talking? That's being present. That's what I think God really wants for a prayer, is just for us to be in an open, honest dialogue, not censoring ourselves, just being with God, having a relatedness, a relationship with God. I think that's what real prayer is.
Here's one for you. You can give your past self advice.
Yeah.
Now, you have a little way of doing this, and I thought we should play with that. How do you give your past self, your younger self, that time before, advice, and how does that advice then carry through today?
Well, so part of the question is, this is great, Rabbi Brian, love the idea, but how do you know what it is you're supposed to do? And I played with this for a long time, and the idea is that if religion's a path to a goal, how do you know what that goal is for your particular life? Well, one of the ways of looking at it is, if you, Barry, could look at yourself at half your current age, what piece of advice would you want to give to you?
Boy, you know what? I do think of that sometimes, and I say, I joke, there is this element that I just wish I had the wisdom that all these years took me to develop in half the time.
And if you could give yourself one little phrase that fit on a fortune cookie.
Or you even say, fit on a tombstone, don't you?
Fit on a tombstone, fit on a Post-it note, a brief phrase. What would you tell yourself? What would you tell younger Barry? Relax? What would you tell you?
You know, it's funny, you say relax, but, I had another guest who once said, you've never gone to a doctor, and he said, you don't have enough activity in your life. You don't work enough. It's always to just sort of relax. Take it easy. Appreciate everything you've got. I think gratitude. Gratitude is, when you were talking about the prayers, I think if there's any sense, it's in the gratefulness that I can relate to that aspect of it. Because for so many years, I don't think I put that element in the forefront of my mind. And as I got older, when I was able to put the gratefulness in the forefront of my consciousness, that in itself was a tremendous, I felt a certain energy about that.
So let me give you a thought. You know you want to have more gratitude in your life. The question then is how? I mean, I know I want to do it, but it's one thing to know it, another thing to do it. Here's some real simple, practical things to do. You have a cell phone. You know, you can put a little message, what your name is, put in, be grateful. Just so that when you look at your phone, you go, oh yeah, be grateful. Put a little note maybe on your mirror, on your rear view mirror. It says gratitude on it. Or inside your wallet, put a little note. It says, what are 3 things I'm grateful for? Here's another one of my favorites where gratitude's great. Every time you eat something larger than the bulk of an egg, it's a good rabbinic measurement, the bulk of an egg. Anytime you eat something larger than the bulk of an egg, see if you can't think of 3 things you're grateful for. And the reason this is, as opposed to just knowing, I know I want to be grateful, it gives you a way of interacting with yourself and bringing gratitude into your life on a daily basis.
I want to give your website again. Now, I know it's been appearing under your name and things like that, but just again, so people know how to reach you. I am assuming you are promising to answer everyone that's going to be writing you, and you'll be blogging away there. It's www.religion, RELIGION unanswered-the-box.com. It's kind of funny. I had another guest that said, I always felt funny putting a .com after religion. But let me ask you something. Why the dashes?
It didn't run together. Religion outside the box.
I
had to separate it out somehow.
All right, I just wanted to know. So
it's quite a long email address.
It is, I know, and they can reach you through there, though.
Absolutely.
We talked before about gratitude, and that's what I said I thought was one of the great keys. But you also had in your blog this question of suspicion. I think it was suspicion. Yes, suspicion or gratitude. And how suspicion was easy to get a hold of. It was the first thing we as humans might have come to our mind. But gratitude, because now this will tie it all back together, it's the harder of the two. It's harder for us, and it doesn't seem it. In fact, you would think that the gratitude would be the easiest thing to have, and yet it's true, we are naturally a bit more suspicious.
We're all on edge a bit, yeah. I thought to myself, I think I was trying to put together a gratitude list, and I came up with things I was suspicious of, and the question came to my mind, if I asked anybody to name 2 things they don't believe, 3 things they're suspicious of, they could rattle them off immediately. But to ask somebody for one thing they're deeply thankful for, it hits us in a funny place, in an almost embarrassing place. And I find everyone has that gratitude, but we don't share it. We don't wear it outside. I wonder why, which I guess would be my suspicion kicking in, but we all have this deep gratitude. I think that's part of just being a human being. We all have a thankfulness, a connectedness. And that I think is the heart of real religion.
Well, you know, you asked a question in one of the blogs, and I found this something I wanted to play with you on, and that is, you ask us to think of what do we really want? What can we fathom if we really could get it? And then you ask these questions. If you knew you could get that, does it freak you out? And I thought, that's an interesting thing, because why would, if I really got what I wanted, why would that freak me out? But the more I played with that notion, I think of Garth Brooks' song, Be Careful for Unanswered, or not be careful, he says, be thankful for unanswered prayers, actually. And I wonder if getting, you know, there is some sort of nerve, my nerves get on edge a little bit if I actually ask what I want. In fact, I don't do it. I won't do it. I won't really sit there and ask for what I want.
Isn't that fascinating?
Now I'm talking to you, it's extremely fascinating, and I'm still puzzled by that.
Adults, kids, well, I think it comes from being kids. A 2-year-old knows what they want. I want that.
Oh, gosh.
Right?
Yeah, and ask for it immediately.
But then we socialize them, and we teach them, you can't just ask for everything you want. And I think as adults, we take that in too much. And it comes to a point that that little kid in us that wants something, as soon as that voice comes up, we push it down. Ask a friend what they really want for their birthday. Chances are they're not gonna be able to tell you. But to really let that out, you know, that's what I really want. I really want a wireless headset for my phone. That's what I really want. For me to ask for what I really wanted from my parents as a goofy gift, it was, I almost wanted to throw up.
But then you take it to that next level. So then how do you ask the infinite, however term, because you're even careful if you, what do I really want?
I think first you have to figure out what it is you want. And then you have to get a bit of a relationship with God, and maybe, can you even ask? Do you have the balls to ask God for what you really, really want? Do you feel you really deserve that? And then you figure out, you'll find out the answers. A lot of people, there's that, a lot of religions, and there's that idea of manifesting, asking for what you want. I'm just still stuck and fascinated with the fact that most of us, most adults, don't really ask. Most real good adults don't ask for what they want.
You just said it. Most really good adults don't ask. Isn't that the great
irony? Well, it's
irony?
the same thing as being
Not
a
so
kid.
good adults ask all the time.
Well, little kids learn to be good by not asking for the ice cream when they want it. They learn to be good for not asking for that toy that you can't buy them. They learn to be good by not asking for what they want. And unfortunately, we also don't ask for what we need. And I would say a lot of that is just love, human interaction, connectivity. We don't ask people enough for hugs. We don't ask people enough, I'm having a really hard time. Can you just listen? I need to just vent for 5 minutes. We don't ask people for that. I think because the fear is they'd say no. I don't know why we don't ask for these things. I know we need to.
Well, Rabbi, I asked you to come on the show, and I'm very grateful
I am as well.
Thank you so very much, and thank you for joining us. Now, before Rabbi Brian leaves, I would like to leave you with these words from his website. True religion is about being a part of rather than apart from. I'm Barry Kibrick. Wherever you find your religion, when you look between its lines, may it lead you to be a part of rather than apart from. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
If you'd like a tape of our show or would like to become a member of our book club and receive our weekly email show updates, just write us at barrykibrick@aol.com